In Hollywood, ambiguity is its own kind of power. Some stars flirt with queerness through roles, fashion, or public moments without ever labeling themselves. Whether it's red carpet choices, on-stage energy, or off-screen interviews, these men have blurred lines and sparked conversations for years. This episode of Rainbow Spotlight dives into 5 male celebrities whose careers are built on more than just looks and talent. They've embraced fluid aesthetics and queer-coded energy that keeps fans guessing and longing for more. From brooding indie actors to rock stars dripping with glam, these icons have mastered the art of seduction without the need for confirmation or denial. Let's dive into the charm, mystery, and unapologetic ambiguity of today's list, the kings of queer-coded cool. Connor Franta has become a defining voice of authenticity and vulnerability in the world of digital media. Known for his boy-next-door charm and contemplative aesthetic, he first captured the internet's attention back in the early 2000s. As one of YouTube's golden-era creators, Connor built a loyal following with his relatable vlogs, quirky humor, and soft-spoken insights on life, love, and growing up in a small town in Minnesota. What set Connor apart wasn't just his cinematic editing style or aesthetic eye, it was his emotional honesty. In 2014, during a period when LGBTQ+ representation on YouTube was still limited, Connor made the life-changing decision to come out as gay in a heartfelt video. The 6-minute clip quickly went viral, but what lingered wasn't the views, it was the rawness. Fans watched as Connor, voice trembling and eyes watery, shared his truth with millions of strangers. The vulnerability was palpable, and for many LGBTQ+ youth, that video became a lifeline. Professionally, Connor didn't let his coming out define the limits of his brand. If anything, it expanded them. He ventured into writing, releasing memoir-style books like A Work in Progress and Note to Self, both of which became bestsellers. Through poetic reflections and unfiltered storytelling, Connor opened doors to conversations around mental health, identity, and personal growth. His words offered comfort to those navigating the same emotional landscapes he once felt trapped in. Beyond YouTube and publishing, Connor carved out space in the fashion and photography world. His Instagram became a mood board of soft lighting, neutral tones, and introspective captions. He collaborated with brands like Urban Outfitters and launched his own lifestyle brand, Common Culture, which started with coffee and apparel but evolved into curated art pieces and merchandise drops. His aesthetic felt minimalist but emotionally loaded, an extension of his personality. Even today, Connor remains refreshingly candid about his struggles with anxiety, loneliness, and the complicated process of self-love. He speaks openly about the pressures of internet fame and how performing happiness for millions can take a toll on mental health. Rather than chasing virality, Connor chose authenticity, often stepping back from social platforms when he needed to recharge. This boundary setting, rare among influencers, only deepened the respect fans and fellow creators had for him. In the broader landscape of queer creators, Connor Franta stands out not for shock value or controversy, but for his emotional depth and creative vulnerability. He shifted the conversation from clickbait to connection, from trending topics to timeless truths. For young LGBTQ+ individuals navigating identity in a digital world, Connor's journey continues to be proof that softness can be powerful and that living authentically, though scary, is always worth it. Dan Amboy. The charming gentleman who chose to live authentically for years, Dan Amboy effortlessly played the role of the handsome, all-American leading man. With his chiseled jawline, sparkling blue eyes, and boy-next-door smile, Hollywood seemed eager to cast him as the romantic interest, the straight heartthrob, or the charming co-worker. From his appearances on TV shows like Younger to Hallmark Channel movies, Dan was building a career that fit the mold perfectly. But beneath that clean-cut image, there was always a quieter truth. While many actors in his position might have stayed silent, Dan decided early on that hiding wasn't part of the life he wanted. In 2017, with grace and understated confidence, he came out publicly and did so on his own terms. The news arrived not through a scandal or a leaked tabloid story, but as part of a joyful announcement. Dan had just married his longtime partner, Eric P. Berger. For fans who had followed his career, the announcement felt like a refreshing breeze. There was no dramatic revelation, just authenticity and love. Dan handled it with the same gentleness and sincerity that fans loved about him on screen. He didn't make it a media spectacle. Instead, he celebrated love while showing young LGBTQ+ actors that they don't have to choose between their truth and their career. Visually, Dan Amboyer fits the romantic archetype to perfection. Tall, with broad shoulders and a natural warmth in his expression, he carries an energy that's both strong and approachable. Whether dressed in tailored suits on the red carpet or in relaxed sweaters during interviews, his style remains polished without trying too hard. There's a softness to him that draws people in, making it easy to see why casting directors were so eager to place him in leading man roles. Professionally, Dan's decision to live openly didn't end his opportunities, though it did shift the types of roles he was offered. He's since taken on more diverse characters, with depth and complexity that go beyond surface-level charm. His theater background, including time spent performing Shakespeare, gave him the acting chops to transition into more layered storytelling. What sets Dan apart in Hollywood's evolving landscape is his balance. He's neither a tabloid fixture nor an activist constantly in the spotlight. Instead, he lets his work and personal choices speak for themselves. His social media remains a mix of career updates, behind-the-scenes moments, and glimpses of his life with Eric, always understated but undeniably proud. Today, Dan continues to work steadily in television and film, adding depth and heart to every role he plays. And while Hollywood slowly catches up with true inclusivity, Dan stands as a reminder that soft masculinity, vulnerability, and authenticity are forms of strength. Jim Parsons, the quiet revolution of a leading man. Jim Parsons never set out to become a symbol for LGBTQ+ visibility in Hollywood, but somewhere along the way, he became exactly that. Best known for his role as Sheldon Cooper on the wildly successful sitcom The Big Bang Theory, Jim spent over a decade as America's favorite quirky genius. But off-screen, he was quietly living his truth long before the headlines ever caught up. Born and raised in Houston, Texas, Jim always carried a unique blend of Southern charm and artistic sensitivity. After earning his master's degree in acting from the University of San Diego, he spent years doing theater and smaller TV roles. It wasn't until The Big Bang Theory premiered in 2007 that Jim became a household name, charming millions with his dry wit and impeccable comedic timing. For years, Jim kept his personal life under the radar, not out of shame, but out of a desire for privacy. Friends and colleagues knew he was gay, but it wasn't something he publicly discussed. Hollywood at the time still operated under the unspoken rule that leading men, especially in mainstream comedies, should remain neutral about their sexuality. Jim, in his typical understated way, never played into that expectation, but he also never staged a big coming-out moment. It wasn't until 2012, in a low-key interview with the New York Times, that Jim casually mentioned he was in a long-term relationship with his partner, Todd Spywak. There was no magazine cover, no viral social media post, just a brief acknowledgement, yet it was enough to make headlines. For fans and industry insiders alike, it marked a quiet but powerful shift. Since then, Jim has become one of the most visible and respected openly gay actors on television. His Emmy-winning run on The Big Bang Theory was followed by bold LGBTQ+ focused projects like The Boys in the Band and Hollywood on Netflix, where he fully embraced queer storytelling. But perhaps Jim's biggest impact has been his refusal to fit the stereotypical mold of a gay celebrity. He doesn't rely on flashy activism or dramatic public gestures. Instead, he represents a different kind of visibility, one that's calm, consistent, and refreshingly authentic. He speaks when he feels the need, but doesn't feel pressured to be the spokesperson for an entire community. And in doing so, he's helped normalize LGBTQ+ identities for millions of viewers who saw him, loved him, and never questioned that a gay man could be both hilarious and leading man material. Today, Jim continues to produce, act, and support LGBTQ+ causes from behind the scenes. Whether he's sharing sweet moments with Todd on Instagram or lending his voice to a queer-themed film, Jim Parsons remains an enduring example of what happens when authenticity meets talent. For many, he didn't just play a genius on TV, he helped redefine what it means to succeed in Hollywood while living unapologetically as yourself. Chad Allen, from teen heartthrob to quiet LGBTQ+. Pioneer. Before social media turned coming out into a curated event, Chad Allen was living a very different reality, one that involved tabloids, paparazzi, and an involuntary outing. But let's rewind a bit. In the late 80s and early 90s, Chad Allen was every American teen's TV crush. With his soft blue eyes, messy blonde hair, and that signature boy next door charm, he captured hearts starring in hit shows like Our House and Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. He wasn't just another pretty face on screen, he was a phenomenon. Fan letters poured in. Teen magazines couldn't get enough of him. But behind the glossy covers and on-screen smiles, Chad carried a truth that the industry wasn't ready to handle. Hollywood at the time was deeply closeted. Leading men were expected to project a very specific kind of masculinity, and any deviation from that image could be career-ending. Chad knew this. He also knew that he was gay. In 1996, everything changed. A tabloid photographer caught Chad kissing another man during a private vacation in Hawaii. The photos hit newsstands like a bombshell. Chad, only 21 at the time, didn't get the chance to craft a coming-out narrative on his own terms. It was messy. It was public, and it was completely out of his control. Yet what followed was even more surprising. Instead of retreating or issuing denials like many stars did back then, Chad made a bold choice. He owned it. Quietly but firmly, he started speaking about LGBTQ+ visibility, discrimination, and the importance of authenticity, long before it was common to do so. His career shifted, of course. Hollywood producers weren't lining up to cast him as a romantic lead anymore. Some projects dried up. Others became passion-driven, independent films centered around LGBTQ+ themes. Chad leaned into advocacy work. He took on roles that reflected his truth, even when the paychecks weren't big or the audiences weren't mainstream. One of his standout moments was starring in Save Me, a 2007 film that explored faith, conversion therapy, and queer identity with raw vulnerability. It wasn't just a performance, it felt like a statement piece from an actor who had lived through the real stakes of being openly gay in Hollywood. Off-screen, Chad dedicated time to LGBTQ+ youth programs, public speaking engagements, and even went back to school to earn a doctorate in psychology. He made it clear, being gay wasn't just part of his personal identity. It shaped his mission to create safer, more understanding spaces for others navigating similar journeys. Today, Chad Allen lives mostly outside the Hollywood spotlight, but his legacy lingers. For many queer millennials who watched him grow up on screen, he remains a symbol of quiet strength. He didn't ask to become an LGBTQ+ advocate. Circumstances forced his hand, but when the time came, he stood up, spoke out, and never looked back. Chad's story isn't built on viral moments or flashy headlines. It's built on resilience, soft defiance, and the simple courage to live authentically, even when the cameras weren't rolling. Rebel Wilson, from funny girl to fierce advocate on her own terms. For most of the 2000s and 10s, Rebel Wilson was Hollywood's go-to comedy wildcard, the brash, scene-stealing Aussie with razor-sharp timing and an unapologetic love for chaos. From Pitch Perfect to Bridesmaids, she built a career playing characters who were loud, outrageous, and hilariously self-aware. But off-screen, Rebel was playing a very different role, one of carefully managed privacy. Rebel's public persona was all about body positivity and comedic bravado, but when it came to her personal life, especially her love life, she kept the curtains firmly drawn. For years, the tabloids speculated. Interviews danced around the topic. Rebel's answer was always some mix of playful deflection and polite evasion. And then came 2022. In what felt like classic Rebel fashion, she casually dropped a bombshell on Instagram. A soft-focus photo of her with fashion designer Ramona Agruma, captioned with just enough cheek to keep things light but just enough heart to make it clear. This wasn't a joke. I thought I was searching for a Disney prince, but maybe what I really needed all this time was a Disney princess. Cue the internet melting down. But behind that post was a much messier, more complicated reality. As Rebel later revealed, she hadn't been planning to come out at that particular moment. A major Australian newspaper had contacted her days earlier, giving her a heads up that they were planning to run a story about her new relationship. Rebel, never one to let others control her narrative, beat them to it, on her own terms. For Rebel, the experience became a crash course in what it means to suddenly become a public figure in the LGBTQ+ space. Up until then, her brand had been about humor, not activism. But almost overnight, she found herself becoming a symbol, whether she wanted to or not. And to her credit, she didn't shy away. In interviews that followed, Rebel spoke openly about the nuances of discovering her queerness later in life, about the confusion of navigating new labels, and about how the experience made her more empathetic to people facing their own coming-out challenges. Her message wasn't about grand political statements. It was personal, reflective, and real. Today, Rebel continues to build her life with Ramona, launching businesses, raising her daughter, and occasionally dropping fire selfies with captions that read like punchlines. And while she may never have set out to be an LGBTQ+ role model, for many people, especially those who came out later in life, she's exactly that. Because if Rebel Wilson's journey has taught us anything, it's this: there's no wrong time or wrong way to find your happy ending. So, what's the takeaway? Whether it's Robert Pattinson's moody allure, Paul Mescal's soft masculinity, Damiano David's unapologetic glam, Jacob Elordi's fluid fashion choices, or Jared Leto's lifelong dance with ambiguity, these stars prove one thing: you don't need to fit a label to own your identity. They've blurred the lines between queer-coded and queer iconic, making space for conversations about attraction, gender, and self-expression, without ever confirming or denying anything. And honestly, that mystery? That's part of the charm. Because at the end of the day, queerness isn't always about coming out. It's about being seen, felt, and desired in all the ways that matter. Hit like, subscribe, and let us know which of these stars keeps you guessing the most.